You're listening to episode 788 of the Father Bills podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled Being Good Sheep, given on the fourth Sunday in Easter, 2021. This weekend we heard Jesus speak about himself as the Good Shepherd. So who are the sheep? Well, we are, or at least we should be. Maybe better put, we are his sheep, but often we are not always good sheep, but rather sinful sheep. What do I mean? Well, think of your life. Think about what happened this week and whether you were listening to the voice of the shepherd. Is it safe to say that we sit here in church and we all desire to be good sheep, but most of us, well, most, maybe all, fail in some way each day? This does not mean that we are not Christ's sheep. Instead, it means that we may be lost sheep at times. So what's God's response to us sheep, lost and not lost? God's response to our waywardness is unconditional love. His love is not dependent on whether we have been good or bad sheep, lost or found sheep. His economy of grace is so radical that we struggle to comprehend it. It's almost disturbing. We might even think of it as unfair. How could God love me after all that I have done? Or how could God love that person for all that they have done? We can fill in the blank of who those people are. The Good Shepherd loves us so much that instead of letting us die in our sinfulness, he desired and did himself die, destroyed death, and rose to new life so that we may have a share in that new life in heaven. Now, of course, a question can be raised as to how we will be judged by Jesus in the end, by his perfect love as a good shepherd. And while he does not desire that his sheep walk off a cliff, if we are determined to reject his invitation to communion with his divine presence and ignore and reject his guidance in shepherding, his loving free will allows for hell to be a reality for those whom he condemns. Remember, he will separate them, sheep and goats. So let us not confuse God's perfect love as some kind of predestination to go to heaven or a get-out-of-jail card without any judgment or accountability as with regards to our sinfulness. His love and knowledge is perfect, and only he knows the fullness of our hearts. Something that I want to share is that living as a good sheep is one of joy. It's the fruits of the Spirit. In our culture, we are being told by our culture to be our own person, to do whatever we want. Do not tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me, some of our younger ones will say. This has some merit, but it ultimately falls short. And in some situation, it is deadly to the most deepest sense of that word. Living as a good sheep means that we truly hear Jesus' voice and act on it. We're being called to be obedient. Obedient, that's a word that goes against most everything our world says, don't you think? Obedience is like one of the cardinal sins of our world. Be a rebel. You know what happened to rebellion? Well, just ask Satan. Yet it isn't being obedient to Christ and his church, his bride, that we find true freedom. By listening to the Good Shepherd whom the church proclaims, we find strength, peace, and joy that the world cannot give. It seems ironic. Shouldn't we be shackled if we become obedient to some higher power? No. by being obedient to God, we are free. We're so free, we can actually make a total mess of our lives. And he'll let us. But he doesn't want it. That's why we need to listen to the Good Shepherd. You know, my experience of listening to the Good Shepherd personally has led me to the priesthood. And I love it. I love being a priest. But in my prayer time, it's not always been roses and like, hey, Father Bill, I love you, and you're just awesome. You're doing a great job all the time. I have a profound experience that shaped my early pastoring. And in a time of silence, I heard an actual audible voice. It was something like this. And who do you think you are? I looked and I saw my dog. I'm like, he didn't say that. I was worried disproportionately that I was not doing or something was going to happen and I didn't know how to do it. And I was taking it all on. It reminds me now of that surrender novena. Wish I had it back then. Oh, Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Do you desire to be a good sheep? I hope we all do. Then we need to listen truly to what Christ is calling us to do. This is where the word vocation comes from. Vocare, to call. And if you struggle hearing him, which we all do at times, ask yourself if you're spending time in prayer. I ask myself, do I truly open myself to the presence of the Holy Spirit? Am I actually asking the Holy Spirit to come into my life? To open my heart, my mind, my ears, my senses to his presence? Do I read the scriptures on a regular basis? Am I aware of the story and the teachings of Jesus? Am I obedient to Christ's commands? They are hard. Love your enemy. Do good to those who hurt you. Those are hard. Are there sins, I might ask, in my life that keep me closed to listening to him? Sometimes trauma can do that too. Do I have a desire to serve and look for opportunities to serve, not myself, but others? And even more complicated, so often there can be a mixture of motives. Like if I do this is serving somebody, but I get something out of it. I have to ask, which one of those two should be my motivation? All of these and more are part of what makes good sheep. In time and with practice, we learn to hear him even better in our hearts and are more attuned to his voice and his presence. And in addition to being good sheep, we need good shepherds. Shepherds here who will speak the words of Christ to us. We need good deacons and priests and bishops who are willing to serve and work alongside their flock and encourage them and help them in their journey to holiness. Maybe you know a man who might be called to be a good priest or deacon. Let them know about it. Sometimes they're thinking about it and they're asking God. And then someone comes up to them and says, you know what, you might make a good priest. That was my experience over and over. Okay, Lord, just let me know. And over and over and over, I kept getting the answer. But I just didn't listen to it sometimes. I wanted to make money. I wanted to be a computer engineer. I wanted to have the car, the house, and the stuff. In my case, I was given everything on my bucket list that I thought I wanted, except for the last one, which I avoided. The last one, which actually has given me the greatest of all joy, and that for me was the priesthood. So maybe you know some man, maybe middle-aged or younger. Maybe you're that person. Search your heart. What is it that drives you deep inside? If it is for your own glory or for the approval of others, if you're really being serious and those are your answers, then just keep searching, because this is not for you. If you feel called by God to die to yourself and serve his bride, the church, regardless of convenience and reputation, status, wealth, etc., then you might consider discerning more seriously this vocation to the ordained life. Let us then pray that we may all be holy and obedient to the Good Shepherd, that we would be good sheep, that we would listen to his words of love and guidance. May we also pray for an increase of special vocations, as I mentioned, the ordained ministries of the church. Could be also religious life for men and women. We certainly need the guidance of Christ's church. We definitely need shepherds. And I testify in my own life as a priest, it has been a great adventure. Serving our good shepherd as his sheep is a life worth living. May we therefore listen and obey the good shepherd who loves us and calls us to a dynamic life of faith.
Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast. Now, if you have any questions or comments about this homily or anything else about the faith, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. And there you can send me an email. You can go see what's going on my Facebook page and ask there, or Twitter. Not as much goes on in Twitter as far as questions, but I'd say Facebook and the email are the best. You can also go to our website, stannegp.com. That's STANNE. G is in grants, as in P is in pass, grantspass.com. And there you can also leave a message. That one, actually, I don't get those right away because I don't check the website as much. That's why sending an email to me directly from my website is the best way to go. In the meantime, may God bless you, be safe, and have a great week. Bye-bye.